The Spaniards forced their way into native settlements, slaughtering everyone they found there, including small children, old men, pregnant women, and even women who had just given birth. They hacked them to pieces, slicing open their bellies with their swords as though they were so many sheep herded into a pen. They even laid wagers on whether they could manage to slice a man in two at a stroke, or cut an individual's head clean from his body, or disembowel him with a single blow of their axes. They grabbed suckling infants by their feet and, ripping them from their mother's breast, dashed them headlong against the rocks. Page 15, Bartolomé de las Casas. All those who could do so took to the hills and mountains in order to escape the clutches of these merciless and inhuman butchers. These mortal enemies of humankind trained hunting dogs to track them down. Wild dogs who would savage a native to death as soon as look at him, tearing him to shreds and devouring his flesh as though he were a pig. Page 16, Bartolomé de las Casas. They spared no one, erecting especially wide gibbets on which they could string their victims up with their feet just off the ground and then burn them alive. Page 16, Bartolomé de las Casas. Yet another member of the governor's party galloped about, cutting the legs off all of the children as they lay sprawling on the ground. Page 22, Bartolomé de las Casas. Indeed, they invented so many new methods of murder that it would be quite impossible to set them all down on paper. Page 23, Bartolomé de las Casas. Not a single native of the island committed a capital offense, as defined in law, against the Spanish, while all this time the natives themselves were being savaged and murdered. Page 23, Bartolomé de las Casas. During the 3 or 4 months I was there, more than 7,000 children died of hunger after their parents had been shipped off to the mines. Page 30, Bartolomé de las Casas. A Spaniard who was out hunting deer or rabbits realized that his dogs were hungry, and not finding anything that they could hunt, took a little boy from his mother, cut his arms and legs into chunks with his knife, and distributed them among his dogs. Page 74, Bartolomé de las Casas. During these 11 years, more than 2 million souls have perished, and in an area more than 100 leagues by 100 leagues, only 2,000 survivors are to be seen, and even this number is shrinking day by day as the survivors succumb to the rigors of a life of slavery. Page 56, Bartolomé de las Casas. Once the natives saw that their deep humility, generosity, and submissiveness did nothing to soften the hearts of these ravening beasts, and that the Spaniards were prepared to hack them to pieces for absolutely no reason whatsoever, they decided that although they stood no chance of defeating ferocious enemies who were on horseback and were armed to the teeth, they might as well die as men in defense of their homes, avenging themselves on their wicked and hellish enemies, even though they were well aware that, as weak as they were, on foot and unarmed, they were doomed to die, whatever they did. Page 58, Bartolomé de las Casas. One of his officers was responsible for the indiscriminate slaughter of many locals, hanging some, burning others alive, and throwing yet others to wild dogs, sometimes sawing off their hands and feet, sometimes pulling out their tongues or hacking off their heads. Even though the locals never raised a finger against the Spaniards, the distinguished commander knowingly allowed this spate of atrocities to continue unchecked, directing as it was to terrorizing the local people into doing his bidding and into bringing him gifts of gold and other precious objects. Page 60, Bartolomé de las Casas. A man would be invited to choose from among the 50 or 100 young girls the one he most fancied, and she would then be handed over in exchange for wine or oil or vinegar, or for a side of salt pork. Page 70, Bartolomé de las Casas. One woman who was indisposed at the time and so not able to make good her escape, determined that the dog should not tear her to pieces. as they had done her neighbors, and taking a rope and tying her 1-year-old child to her leg, hanged herself from a beam. Yet she was not in time to prevent the dogs from ripping the infant to pieces. Page 73, Bartolomé de las Casas. I testify that I saw with my own eyes Spaniards cutting off the hands, noses, and ears of local people, both men and women, simply for the fun of it. That this happened time and again in various places throughout the region. On several occasions, I also saw them set dogs on people, many being torn to pieces in this fashion. And they also burned down houses and even whole settlements, too numerous to count. Page 112. Bartolomé de las Casas. Such inhumanities and barbarisms were committed in my sight as no age can parallel. My eyes have seen acts so foreign to human nature that I now tremble as I write. Bartolomé de las Casas. The crimes committed in these lands stand out amongst the most unpardonable offenses ever committed against God and mankind, and this trade as one of the most unjust, evil, and cruel among them. Page 31, Bartolomé de las Casas. Offering insight into the savage and barbaric nature of our people in their uncivilized form, from a white man named George Catlin, after traveling and living with various pre-civilization Indian tribes of this continent during the 1800s. I love a people who have always made me welcome to the very best they had. I love a people who are honest without laws, who have no jails and no poorhouses. I love a people who keep the commandments without ever having read them or heard them preached from the pulpit. I love a people who never swear or take the name of God in vain. I love a people who love their neighbors as they love themselves. I love a people who worship God without a Bible, for I believe that God loves them also. I love a people whose religion is all the same, and who are free from religious animosities. I love a people who have never raised a hand against me or stolen my property, when there was no law to punish either. I love and don't fear mankind where God has made and left them, for they are His children. I love the people who have never fought a battle with white men except on their own ground. I love a people who live and keep what is their own without lock and keys. I love a people who do the best they can. And oh, how I love a people who don't live for the love of money.